Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're digging into a pretty wild claim from Wall Street vet Mark Chaikin. He says it's possible to predict major market moves, not just months, but years ahead of time. So let's see how he thinks it's done.
You know, it's the one question that probably every single investor asks themselves. But what if I told you the answer isn't hiding in tomorrow's breaking news, but in a pattern that's been playing out for over 100 years?
And that's exactly the claim Chaikin is making. He says a huge crash is coming, but that most people are looking for it at completely the wrong time and for all the wrong reasons.
So here it is, the core forecast. A powerful bull run through 2025, and then a major crash hits in 2026. I know, that sounds incredibly specific, right? So you have to wonder, how in the world does he come up with that?
Okay, here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll look at the big idea first, then dive into this thing called the 4-year election cycle and its historical pattern. After that, we'll check out a tool called the power gauge and see how it all fits into Chaikin's final playbook.
All right, so first things first, what's the foundation for this whole idea? Well, Chaikin's main point is that if you're trying to predict the market by watching the news every day, you're looking in the wrong place.
In fact, his entire model says that the stuff we all stress about, politics, trade deals, inflation, it's all pretty much just noise. He argues that this deep underlying pattern just keeps on repeating itself, almost regardless of who's actually in office.
So it really all boils down to this simple philosophy. Follow the data, not the drama. The entire system is built on ignoring that day-to-day chaos and just focusing on a really powerful long-term pattern in the market's history.
So, if it's not the news, then what is the signal? Well, according to Chaikin, it's a historical pattern called the 4-year election cycle. And this is the key to figuring out the when of his big prediction.
The theory is pretty straightforward. It says that the stock market tends to behave in a surprisingly consistent way over the 4 years of a presidential term. It's like this recurring wave of behavior that's been happening for over a century. And you can break this cycle down into 4 distinct acts. You've got year 1, the post-election year. Then comes year 2, the midterm year. That's the one to watch out for. After that, things usually pick up in year 3, the pre-election year, and tend to stay strong right into year 4, the election year itself. Each one kind of has its own personality.
Okay, so let's get into the data. Why is this 4-year pattern such a big deal for his forecast?
Well, it's because when you look back at more than 100 years of market data, one of these 4 years just sticks out like a sore thumb. It is, consistently, the weakest of the bunch and the one with the highest chance of a big drop.
So which year is it? I mean, just look at this chart. The visual here tells the whole story, right? You see that massive dip? That's year 2, the midterm year. It just performs dramatically worse than the other 3.
And to put a really sharp point on it, a study by Ned Davis Research found that the average market return in year 2 is a staggering 75% worse than in year 1. That is a huge, huge difference. So let's just recap the pattern. Years 1, 3, and 4 are historically pretty good for stocks, and year 3 is often the absolute best of the bunch. But year 2, well, that's the statistical problem child, and that historical tendency is the when for this entire forecast.
Okay, so knowing when the market might hit a rough patch is one thing, but it's only half the battle, right? As an investor, you need to know what to do about it. And that brings us to the second piece of this puzzle, a tool he created for stock selection.
It's called the power gauge. You can kind of think of it like a really sophisticated scanner for stocks. It crunches 20 different factors, financials, earnings, expert opinions, the whole shebang, and boils it all down to one simple rating: bullish, neutral, or bearish.
So here's how the 2 parts are meant to work together. The election cycle is your big picture map. It answers the question, when? The power gauge is your detailed GPS. It answers the question, what? So one is for timing the market, the other is for picking the stocks.
So, let's put it all together. How do you combine the when and the what into a single, straightforward investment playbook? Well, the playbook itself is actually really simple. Step 1, figure out what year of the election cycle we're in, just to know if you have historical wins at your back or in your face. Step 2, use the power gauge to find the individual stocks that are rated bullish to buy, or maybe more importantly, bearish to stay away from.
And he backs this up with data showing how the power gauge has allegedly performed. Now look at this table and zoom in on 2022. That was a rough year too, but the claim is that the system still flagged 94% of that year's top 50 best performing stocks as bullish.
The whole idea is to show it can find the diamonds in the rough, even in a bad market.
And all of this brings us right back to where we started, to that startlingly specific prediction. Based on the historical average for when that year 2 downturn really gets going, Chaikin pinpoints March 16, 2026 as the most likely start date for the next bear market.
So, there you have it. It's a 1-2 punch of old-school historical cycles and modern data analytics. And it leaves all of us with a really fascinating question to chew on. In today's incredibly complex world, could a pattern that's over a century old really be the best roadmap we have for what's coming next?